Welcome to Power Up Your Practice, the go-to podcast for law firm owners and managing attorneys working on the business, not in it. I'm Ruby Powers, your guide into the heart of law practice management, bringing your insights from leading legal minds, trailblazing attorneys, and expert guests who provide practical perspectives on running your firm more effectively and efficiently. And before we dive in, I'm thrilled to announce that my new latest book, Power Up Your Practice, is out and available on Amazon. It's packed with actionable advice for growing a successful law firm. Be sure to grab your copy today. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter for exclusive tips and resources. And if you're enjoying this podcast, we love your reviews. They help us reach more attorneys like you who are striving to build the practice of their dreams. Prepare to open your mind, be inspired, and power up your practice to the next level. Hi, everyone. This is exciting. We've got Jack Duffley. He is the owner of Duffley Law in Houston, a firm focusing on estate planning and probate. We actually met at CleoCon in Austin, so it took us both to drive a few hours to bump into each other at a conference to meet. And but he's got a really interesting story because he's made his firm go from 1 to 12 in just a year and a half. And he's really been focusing a lot on growth and hiring. So Jack, we're really excited to have you. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ruby. Yeah, it is funny that, we're in each other's backyards, but we had to drive all the way out to the middle of the state to meet each other in Austin. But I'm glad we were able to meet.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you came up to me after my speech, and we were able to connect in the Houston connection as well, even though you're originally from the Chicago area, right?
Yeah, I moved to Houston a couple years back, and my wife and I are putting our roots down here in Houston. We're actually expecting our firstborn here in the next few weeks here. So,
yeah,
Christmas
wow.
maybe up, we shall see. But so it's been an exciting couple of years here, just in lots of changes going on. That's before we even talk about the law firm, which has been a big old project. So, yeah.
Well, thinking about this timeline, I actually had my firm before I had my first kid, and I'm glad I did because I was able to. I mean, everyone has their own timeline, but to be able to sort of build that infrastructure and work those late nights and get a lot of those things done, that when the kid came, I could be a little bit more present. But I usually call my firm my first child, my first non-human child.
So. I don't know how, quote unquote done my firm is right now. There's still a lot of open ends and lots of things to work on. So this first year of being a father will definitely not be easy, but I wasn't expecting it to be. So will still be an adventure.
You're preparing for that. And the other thing is, I had my first kid was born in early January, but everybody was like, "Oh, you should have him in December for tax purposes or something." So they were like, "Oh, I don't know."
You gotta get a little more precise, I guess.
Acupuncture, drink this oil. I don't know what the hell they were telling me to do all this crazy stuff, but
right.
It came on January 7th, and it was perfect. So.
We'll see. I mean, we're within range there. It's going to be it could be any day now. You never really know. So, but we're excited.
Well, tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are right now in terms of you. I see you make a note that you were I guess laid off, and then you moved, and then you're like, oh, I have an idea. I'm going to start a firm, and then like I'm going to go crazy and hire a whole bunch of people and grow real fast. So tell us how you did. What was the thought process?
That wasn't a half bad synopsis, but a year and a half ago, I started out of school. That would have been in 2021. So right after the whole pandemic stuff, or kind of the tail end of it, I was finishing up law school when everything went virtual, which was awful. I mean, but anyways, so I was excited to get out of there because, the first couple of years of law school, I had a really nice experience, but then that third year when the pandemic stuff hit just made it so much worse. So that got me also looking at like different options on, potentially moving out of the area as well, which sort of planted the seed there. And that's one of the reasons we looked at Texas, just as a change of pace from Illinois. But anyways, I was working in big law at the time, right out of school, in commercial real estate mainly, and overall had a pretty positive experience there. Definitely got a lot of volume done, which is kind of the name of the game with big law. It's lots and lots of hours, and got to learn a lot through that process, and had a pretty good experience. Like I said, eventually we made the move to Houston, and the firm at the time had an office down there too. However, commercial real estate volume was definitely down at the time that I moved. Rates had been hiked a pretty good bit, so I was I was one of the first on the chopping block in a group that got laid off. So I was kind of scheming about starting my own firm at some point in the near future. At that point, anyways, I guess be careful what you wish for, but it just kind of pulled that decision forward a couple, maybe a year or two earlier than I might have otherwise considered. So decided just to dive in feet first and try and figure out what to do. And it's been an adventure since. But yeah, kind of like you were saying, I did it for a few months, being completely solo, and then thought, okay, if I can run some ads and get new clients, and then I can bring in another attorney or staff to handle the phones and handle the matters, then I have a business now, and we can really scale this thing. So one thing led to the next. I started hiring people definitely way too quickly, but things have definitely stabilized a lot more than where they were when we first started. Since I definitely overhired at the start, which we can talk about, but it's just been one thing after the next, trying to keep building, trying to keep getting better at the things we're doing. And that's really going to be the name of the game for this next year. Now that we've kind of figured out what we really want to do, which is focusing on estates and probate, we're trying to get really good at that during this next year, trying to get the systems down, get the processes down, get things done quickly, and still keeping them very effective. So that's what we're focusing on heading into this next year.
So you've sort of had, I sort of see some similarities in my story too with the, I graduated during the Great Recession in 2008, and you're in that pandemic, and I started teaching a couple of years ago, and I had law clerks that were during the pandemic and the whole online experience. We actually had like a virtual law school at our office because one of our law clerks was doing law school while he was, from our office space because nobody else was there. That does have it's like sort of an inflection point for a change in the way things are done, and sort of like it sort of changed the way perspective of how things can be done more remotely in the practice. And I'm also interested in like why you chose your area of expertise with estate planning and probate. What was
Well, when I started the firm, I thought I was just going to be doing all real estate law because that's really my forte. I come from a transactional real estate background. I went to law school expecting it to kind of help my real estate investing career or whatever I was picturing there, just in buying or maybe eventually developing properties. So that's what initially drew me towards that anyways. So that's what I started trying to do. I found it pretty difficult to advertise for that down here in Texas. Maybe it's because people don't typically need an attorney, or it's not required to have an attorney on a real estate deal, whereas in Illinois it is required, which we're originally from. So that might have been something. Maybe I'm making an excuse. I don't know, but I found it really difficult given what we were trying to do with paid ads to get real estate transactions. It's a very relational type thing anyways, especially in the commercial space. You got to know brokers, you got to know people like that. That's typically how you get your business. So anyways, since I was newer to Texas, I didn't have a big old network down here. So that was kind of hard. But every time I did a little real estate thing, maybe I did a deed for someone or cleaned up some issue with title, then a lot of them would ask, hey, do you do wills or do you do estates? And I kept saying, like, frustratingly, well, no, not really. It's not my area. And I started looking more into it, and I'm like, okay, this makes a lot more sense. I then found it was a lot easier to advertise for as well, just because people typically are looking for an estate planning attorney much more often than they're looking for, real estate transactional attorney. At least that's what I found. So that got me looking to bring on some folks onto the team who could help supplement that, my void in the expertise and go from there. Same thing on the probate side. Probate's really just the other side of the estate planning coin. So, and we've been able to drum up a lot of business doing that, and we've gotten, I think, pretty good at it. Definitely not as great as we could be, and that's what we're working on, going forward. But it just made a lot of sense. It was, from a business perspective, it was a lot easier to advertise for. We were able to get talent to fill whatever gap in expertise that I had. And then at the same time, I've been able to get up to speed on a lot of those things, since they're often very adjacent to real estate anyways. There's usually going to be real estate involved in a probate case or in an estate plan. So it has kind of complemented that pretty well. So I think it's worked pretty well. It's not that we don't do any real estate anymore, but I'd say 90% of our practice now is split between estate planning and probate.
So when you started your firm, when was your first hire after that? Like when?
Yeah. So I technically started it April of 2023, and I'd say I kind of had one foot in for that summer. So I started actually officially running ads to it in August of that year. So I kind of give the unofficial start date of the firm as being August, because this is when I really took it seriously and was like, okay, I'm going to go all in. I'm going to go full time on this. So I started it. I started running ads then, and then I made my first hire in November, and this was for someone who could help on the intake side of things, because that was actually the first bottleneck I ran into, or one of them, was just, okay, I started running ads. Now I'm getting all these leads, and I couldn't keep up with the leads while also still having to do all the legal work. So I thought, okay, I'll make my first hire someone on the intake side, someone who could help me with the phones and make sure that we're addressing all the leads that are coming in. Because if we can't even address the leads we're paying for, we're just lighting money on fire. And also, we don't know as easily what campaigns are working if we're not answering them. And that was the first hire in November. We quickly hired our second person. A couple weeks later, actually someone overseas in the Philippines to help also on the intake side. And then within a couple weeks of that, we ended up hiring our first associate, which, in hindsight, I don't know if that was the right order to do things. Probably would have made sense to bring on some support staff first, like a paralegal or a secretary, just sort of ease into that a little bit, offloading legal work. But we've made it this far, so I guess it worked out all right. But if I were to do it again, I probably would have tried to bring on a paralegal or something with a little bit less of a a price tag attached to it, just to make sure that we were being a little bit more careful there. So it was really that sort of November, December of last year, almost to the date, that we started really ramping up the hiring.
Well, so I think there's a lot, having had a firm for 15 years, I've noticed that sometimes there's a lot of, like we put a lot of stock in the number of staff, but what I've found is that sometimes you can do a lot more and be more profitable with less people. And I've and then also, like, I feel like there's a whole nother twist on things about like how efficient you can be between like virtual assistants and AI bots and AI, and just so much so that like now I'm sort of the mindset, like I don't really want to hire more people until I know we're definitely have the right systems in place. Like we're working on building out our CRM a little bit better now that it integrates with our case management software and some of those types of things. So I think like there can be some concerns about growing too quickly and those types of things. So like how are you like because sometimes also I've seen is that like you get a lot of work coming, maybe from your marketing, or you get viral or something, like good referral systems or something, and you're like, woo, and then you're like, oh, we have to get the staff to cover it. And it's just this whole like constant, trying to have the staff and have the business and everything, but not too little staff and not too much, too much business, or if be able to handle it. So how do you feel like you're controlling because it seems like you're moving really quickly?
No, it for sure is. It's a bit of a hamster wheel. You bring in the work, then you have too much work, then you got to bring in more people, then you have too many people and not enough work, so you got to go get more work. So it's that constant seesaw. Ideally, you get some economies of scale at some point, and then that seesaw is less aggressive. But it's we definitely, I would say, I wouldn't say I face planted. When I first started a bunch of people, it's not like the people were bad. It's just that we brought on way too many people way too quickly, to where we lost tens of thousands of dollars in just a few months' time. After we made kind of our initial couple hires, we brought on basically 2 attorneys, 2 or 3 intake folks, and I'm probably missing one other person, all within about like 2.5 months. And that was a lot of payroll to absorb. And I didn't have I was not nearly as good at keeping retainers replenished and all that stuff. So a lot of that quickly was exposed, which on the one hand, it was great learning that quickly. And it really forced me to clean up a lot of that stuff. So that was great. But, had I slowed down a bit, maybe we could have done that with a little less damage. At the very least, we kept clients happy during that time. So we still have been able to put out the good work first, but at the same, if you can only put out so much good work if you're not also collecting on the other side and running a clean business. So we've definitely gotten over our skis a couple times, just over this past year and a half, just bringing on that many people. But at least in the past few months, I'd say, since this summer of 2024, things have stabilized a lot more. We've slowed down the hiring a lot, and we're trying to really focus on that system side to make sure that, like you said, we're maximizing what everyone can do, what everyone's been doing, and that we don't need to just bring on more people and just throw more bodies at the issue. Let's just try and get some better systems in place. At ClioCon, my eyes were open to a lot of different vendors out there because we use Clio for our practice. So just looking at the different plugins and tools and that sort of things that integrate well with Clio. That's been really helpful. We've gotten a few add-ons to that very recently since then. And that's something that our new managing attorney, which has actually been our most recent hire, is really focusing on. She very much has like a systems lens, or maybe a systems a bend to her, if you will. And that is, I think, going to really, really help us as we move forward in scaling. And ideally, it will get me out of case management as well, because that's been one of the more recent big bottlenecks, is just me having to manage every single case. I know I'm not the best attorney in the world, so if I can get someone who's better than me at certain practice areas who could actually manage those cases, then that's great. That makes the firm that much stronger, and also allows me to focus on other things in the business, like selling, for example, or literally anything else besides actually working on matters. And I can still work on matters if I wanted to, but at least I'd have the flexibility as long as we can kind of nail this transition. We've just been working on that over this last month. It's a very recent hire, but I think so far so good there, which has been really good to see. It's just it's a lot of work to get that transition done when you have really hundreds of matters at any given time now that need attention.
So one thing that I've seen a lot is that a lot of law firm owners don't grow very quickly because they're usually afraid of their first hire. And the easy one can generally be like a reception service, maybe virtual assistant, depending on how open-minded they are about tech. I feel like now it's like an old concept, like, yeah, that's sort of like a given now for some people. But you usually, and it's also because people are really bad at delegation. So would you consider yourself a really good delegator, or like, or you could to have a lot of staff, like you not only do you need to spot the right people, that you have to like keep them engaged and make them profitable. So what would you?
I don't know. I'm trying to get better at it every day. I bet I'm probably better at delegating and managing certain things than others. For example, I'd probably consider myself a better a better legal team manager or case manager than an intake manager. Running a sales team is quite different than running a team of attorneys. And I've been in more environments where I've been running or been part of a team of attorneys. So it's probably just a result of experience, if I had to guess. But I'm trying to get better every day with that. And there's definitely been a ton of stuff to work on over the last year. So I've definitely grown as a manager and a leader, but there's always stuff to work on there. So definitely working on that. And part of it is just getting more people to take things off of each other's plates and just giving people a good amount of leeway to run with things. Sometimes I think I overdo that, where I give someone maybe a little too much autonomy, and just, it's not so much that I wouldn't trust them. It's just that maybe they just would need a little bit of direction first. And because I haven't communicated what exactly I want to see, I just assume that they might be on the same page as me. That's not always the case. So being able to clearly communicate what exactly your expectations are, that's something I'm trying to do a lot more of, just having expectations in writing, having goals in writing, having, I guess, that vivid vision concept from like the Cameron Herald book, that sort of thing as a guiding light that other people can look at as well, trying to work on that kind of thing. And I think that really helps when it comes to delegating anything. If we have some sort of guiding light, core values and all that stuff, so that when there is a decision, if there's doubt one way or another, we have something to be our guiding light there. Again, it's an ongoing struggle. I'm not going to say I'm the world's best delegator by any means, but I'm working on it and trying to get better each day.
Well, that's what matters, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And knowing our shortcomings and leaning into strengths. Are you feeling overwhelmed by administrative, marketing, or other legal tasks? Well, you're not alone. Many lawyers are in the same boat. They're trying to build up their firm and they're trying to figure out how to get help to do so. So that's where Staffy comes in. So over 90 law firm owners, just like you, have turned to Staffy for help with their legal, administrative, marketing, and client-facing work. Staffy's mission is to help lawyers find balance while growing their firm with bilingual virtual staff and full HR support. And they take the hassle out of the team management and focus on what matters most, your clients and your practice. I've personally benefited from multiple staff support with about 8 virtual assistants over the last few years with my 2 businesses, including my law firm, Powered Law Group. Now schedule a free consultation with Staffy. It's stafi.cc, and you can use the code RUBY, that's REBY, for a $500 off coupon. Well, okay, so one of the things you said that made me really intrigued is like you basically hired a managing attorney that's not you in like within about a year and a half or something of having your practice. So what's your plan with that? Like, I mean, I think a lot of times people can't either afford that role that's not them, or, like what's your, I guess like, yeah, what is your vision with that? Like, and where do you fit in going forward?
Yeah. So I never really wanted this to be, the cult of Jack or something like that. So I know a lot of attorneys kind of do that. And I mean, I'm not going to pretend like the firm doesn't have my name on it, but it's this thing where I know that the thing I try to always remind myself of is that I am the number one bottleneck in everything, because everything eventually stops with me, or at least I'm the default bottleneck for everything until something else is set up. So at the beginning, when I'm a solo, you're the bottleneck for literally everything. As you bring on more people, you're less of a bottleneck in some areas and then maybe more in others. So lately that has been case management and actually working on matters, because I'm also our chief sales guy. So, I'm doing a lot of consultations, trying to actually close people. And I've gotten a lot better at that over this year. And I want to be able to focus on setting up the sales team next. I'm getting ahead of myself, but right now I want to get the legal team in a really good spot. And if we can bring on a really good managing attorney, like I think we have, then that kind of covers that part of the firm. So where now I can go focus on some other part of the firm and work on building the team out over there. So I would imagine the next part would be marketing and sales. All that is, or a lot of that is running through me right now, or at least I have a huge hand to play in a lot of it. It's not that everything's running through me, but if I can build up the legal team, that's step 1, then build up the sales team, that's step 2. And so on. You just do that with each department at the firm. But being able to try and focus on one at a time is helpful. You can't always focus on one department at a time, though, of course, because there's fires that pop up all the time. But to your question on kind of what we're trying to do long term, I definitely don't want to stay at this scale forever. We're kind of around the 6-figure per month in revenue mark. So we're looking to expand beyond that. We don't want to stay in Houston forever. We picture being more of a statewide practice, at least here in Texas, but that'll take years to build. This first year has been kind of a roller coaster of just trying to work out mainly the Houston market, which is a huge market in itself. So there's plenty of room to go here. But that's why this next year is really about trying to make sure we get really good at what we're doing, especially on the estates and probate side. Once we're really good there, we have some repeatable systems in place. We have a solid team and training and everything that we can then sort of cookie cutter, bring that over to another market in Texas. Maybe it's one of the big cities or something like that. That's sort of the formula we have in mind long term. There's tons of work to do here locally in Houston before we do that, but that's kind of, in the back of the mind of where we're trying to go. So if that's the goal, then we got to have some solid people in place and a solid managing structure to make sure that we can get there and that we can fit that into our organization. So that would never happen if I was doing everything. So managing attorney is one of the key hires to try and get right. And we go from there. So that's not the only hire to make. It's just one of them.
So I mean, I'm just really impressed by your sort of speed and sort of like your big vision, to the whole thing. Because a lot of times people a little bit slower to doing that, but that's awesome. So
I don't know if I'd recommend it. so yeah. But it's kind of like once you get there, once you're already there, it's like, well, okay, am I going to go backwards?
Yeah.
And sometimes you do have to take steps backwards. We've let team members go before, so it's not like that hasn't happened.
Yeah.
But it just comes with the territory, especially when you make a mistake or you don't set expectations in the right way, and it's just a learning experience all around. It's not fun, but those are some of the many challenges you go through. But yeah, again, if I was redoing it, knowing what I now know, I could probably get up to speed really quickly, even quicker, because I know some of the things we've been through already. But I think we could have made it a little bit more sustainable, especially at the beginning, with just slowing down the rate of hiring and also focusing our practice area. I think that was actually a big limitation. I was just saying yes to everything, partly out of necessity because we got to meet payroll and everything.
Right.
But also, even just within real estate, if I say yes to some like tenant dispute, that's going to look very different than some commercial leasing transaction. That's going to look very different from some sale. Yeah, it's all real estate law, but it's so wide just within the niche. And then we start adding probate and estates on top of that. It just was all over the place. So we tried to really focus it on just estates and probate going forward. And that's helped a ton just for marketing and sales, and then allowing us to get some room to try and build out consistent systems and routines rather than just kind of not winging it, but you're figuring out as you go in some of these newer areas that you maybe weren't familiar with. So that's helped a ton.
And I think like estate planning, I think if I was an immigration attorney, I would probably go into estate planning, probate, wills, elder law, or something like that, because it's like a growing area with the baby boomers retiring and a lot of movement going on. I'm like sort of a transition of wealth. I don't know. I think it's because I've had to do a lot of work with my parents over the years,
Sure.
and I just sort of, and I was watching my grandmas, and just sort of seeing like what's needed. But I'm not changing my area right now. But is that I probably there's a good room for growth in that space in the future too.
Yeah, there's so many areas like you can be, especially in the law. I found just in looking at other firms and reflecting on our own experience, even one seemingly small niche, you can make a large practice out of it. One of my favorite examples is Michael, the investments lawyer on Twitter. We've gotten to know each other pretty well, but he started his own firm coming out of big law in this last year, and all he does is set up funds. He doesn't do like anything else. It's just setting up funds for people all over the country, and that's his niche. It's a very narrow niche for a very specific client avatar, I think is what people like to call it. And he's been able to build a business on that. He's hired team members and everything. That's a really narrow niche. We say estate planning, but you already identified a couple, sub niches. Are you doing will plans? Are you doing, Medicaid stuff? Are you doing elder law or whatever it is? Even within estate planning, there's so many sub niches. A lot of our clients end up being, for example, right now, living trust plans. I would call that more of a, I don't want to say a standard plan because every plan is a little bit different, but that is a very common plan that works for a lot of different people, is a living trust with a will, your powers of attorney, and all your standard kind of estate planning documents that would typically come with that kind of plan. That is its own kind of niche, and that's very different than like asset protection type trusts where someone is trying to protect some portion of their estate, and there's different nuances there. So you can specialize within those otherwise specialized niches. And I think that can really help if you have somewhat of a market to start with. So if you have a network of friends in business and you really like setting up, corporate structures and entities, then you can lean on that, and that maybe that's the focus. If you have friends and family, people are unfortunately dying all the time. So there's usually a demand for probates at any given time. And then someone always knows someone who's going through some sort of situation, and then maybe you can lend a helping hand. But that's one thing I probably should have done a little bit more reflecting on, is that initial practice area and that initial focus. Maybe had I not been laid off, I would have spent more time doing that, but I don't know. So we're doing it now, though. Now we have some more serious scale, but increasingly trying to say no to things and focusing on a narrower niche has been quite helpful as we've grown. So
before we go to the rapid fire questions, what what do you think makes your firm stand out? What makes it different than other firms in the estate planning and probate space?
Yeah. I want to say this without sounding, vain or anything like that, right? but I think we have a really solid team, and we're embracing sort of the virtual and efficiency kind of environment that allows us to put things out quickly. And I think a lot of our clients have come to appreciate that. It's not that other law firms aren't doing that too. I kind of poo-pooed virtual law school, but we've embraced virtual at the law firm, and it has a lot of value that can be used to help clients. So that's one thing with it. And one thing that's really nice is because we have a growing team, that kind of puts us in a different sort of category than if I was still a solo, for example. We have people where we have someone who can specialize in a very specific area, and I can be very confident sending a specific matter to them because I know they can handle it well. Whereas if it was just me doing everything, I could be like, yeah, I could do it, but I'll have to figure it out. It's really nice not having to do that. I could just say, oh yeah, we're sending it over here to this person who does this kind of law. You'll be in good hands. And just having that confidence is something we really like. And then I've been really proud of the review profile we've been able to build in that time too. We've got nearly a 5-star rating on Google, 4.9, which makes it look more legitimate, right? when you have a 4.9 instead of a 5. But we're just continuing to pile that on and try and build up that review profile. Since at the end of the day, it's what clients say that matters. So I could tell you about why I think the firm's great, but I'd rather let clients do that since they're the judges at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's true. Well, okay. So what is your favorite board game and why?
Yeah, I don't do a lot of board games.
It could be video game if you want.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. When I was younger, I played a lot of the Total War games. The strategy type games. I've always always like the. I don't know if it's like the map painting, the conquering, and all that.
Like Risk and Stratego or those types of things.
Something along those lines. I've liked those. I'm also a big history guy, so it's kind of like a double whammy. You get a challenging game, and then you get the history and the geography and everything with it. So I've liked those. Spent way too many hours on them in my lifetime.
Well, that time is going to disappear when your little one arrives.
Oh, it's already gone. It's already gone. That's before he's even here. So,
what do you think is your superpower and why?
Man, it's always weird talking about yourself, but I feel like I have a pretty solid temperament. It's not that I don't get frustrated or angry or sad, but I can generally stomach things, or I'm getting certainly better at that. Just stomaching greater and greater challenges and getting through greater and greater adversity, a lot of it being self-built. I think that is, if there's one thing I've been pretty good at, it's just maintaining, even through very stressful times, just keeping it as cool as possible and getting through it. It has served me well, at least thus far. So if there's one thing I could think of, that's where my mind goes to.
Awesome. Well, so what is the habit that you think contributes to your success?
I always want to say planning, but I don't know about that because I've made so many spreadsheets and Excel sheets, your master plan, and then they change every week. So I don't know if it's planning. I really think it's just taking consistent action each day. And working on something that you care about. So this firm is my project, and my newborn son will probably become the next project. But for now, it's the firm, and that's it's a huge advantage, just having that going on, just being able to work on something that you're building, which is very different than when I was like in the big law world. Like it's a fine career. You can do a lot of good things with it. And you can definitely learn a lot through it, but being able to work on something that I can build upon and, just stack skills over time and learn new perspectives and that sort of thing is so valuable. And it's just a feedback loop. And I don't know what else to say other than that, but it's been a really positive experience doing that. Just having something that you own or that I own specifically that I can work on each day, for better or for worse. It definitely keeps you focused on keeping things moving forward.
That's true. It's definitely. I actually was coming back from Thanksgiving, and I was like, man, I'm tired. I don't know if I want to go back to work. I was like, but I own the law firm. Okay, now I have to go back to work.
Correct. I don't know if I call it a habit. It's just sort of like, that's the environment I've built for myself and that you've built for yourself. We've built something that we own, and for whatever reason, we feel obliged to do something. It's not without good reason. You'll get in some big trouble if you let clients down or if you let your employees down. So, but it's all been built from nothing, which is pretty cool. And then you don't want to lose that. So it's very motivating. And I don't know if I'd call that a habit, but it forces some certain habits. That's for sure.
Well, I was, I think I wanted to add this question after CleoCon's, one of the keynotes, the Atomic Habit, James Clear. I don't know if you got to hear him.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, like I think I read most of the book, and but like to hear him give like some key highlights and summary, it just was really invigorating. And so I was like, I'm going to add this question to the podcast.
That's one of those books it really does motivate you, like immediately upon reading it. You don't even need to read the whole thing. You're just like, okay, yeah. So it's I think that's why it's done so well. It's just you only need to read like 5 pages and you'll get something out of it, even if it's a little positive change. So. Yeah. That's
true. Well, and then so I guess the good segue to the last of the rapid fire questions is just what's a favorite book or when you're reading or a podcast, something that you're like, oh my gosh, I need to share that with the listeners.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd call it my favorite book, but it's definitely one of them. The autobiography of Sam Zell. It's called "Am I Being Too Subtle?" Sam Zell's the late Sam Zell is a famous real estate investor, businessman, very candid, and he's a bit of a character. So he's also, originally he's kind of a Chicago guy. So that's sort of maybe that's a bias on my side of things, but
that's all right.
but it's a good book. He's a funny guy, and he just talks about his business ventures, and he was like doing deals in law school and everything, like buying like whole blocks of neighborhoods, like while he's in law school and all this stuff. He's just kind of a relentless entrepreneur. So anyways, it's an interesting book. So I like that one a lot. And then lately I've just been absorbing lots and lots of just law firm podcasts like your own, like this one I'm on now, which is kind of cool. It's a breaking the wall kind of moment. And then I really like the Hormozis as well. They have really good business content. They've kind of taken over the business content game by storm. So I've really come to enjoy a lot of their stuff for just managing and how to message things and all that sort of things, from the big tactics to the small ones.
Wow. Well, Jack, we've walked through a lot of like your career journey, and even though it's a young career journey, you're also a year and a half in of running your practice and just really, growing at a rapid pace and seeing a big picture. And I think that can really be inspiring to a lot of us who've had our firms for a while, and or those who haven't started one yet and are looking to do that, and to know that you're still like, I'm still learning and I don't know have everything figured out, but you're saying it with a smile and optimism for the future, and that like you're constantly learning, just like everyone who's listening. We all have that in common. So I really appreciate you being on this episode, and what are your closing thoughts, things you want the listener to take away, if we haven't said it already, and how can they find you?
Yeah, I appreciate having me on, but you were kind of mentioning just starting this firm pretty early in my career, which is definitely true. One of the first people I called after I was laid off, when I knew I was going to be starting my own firm, I was someone who actually started his firm immediately out of law school. And I know there's some folks who do that. I still don't quite know how they do it, but I only had a couple years under my belt, and that was definitely helpful, but it's not like I'd seen the inner workings of a firm very much, or how to drum up business or that sort of thing. So just being able to talk to those kind of folks, I think, is really, really helpful. And it's always nice. I feel like other law firm owners are pretty much always willing to talk to talk shop and just talk about running a firm and how to grow a firm, or even if they're not growing a firm, just their experience. There's a lot you can learn from those folks. So I've come to enjoy it, and if I can be helpful in any way, that's great.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I actually forgot we do have a lot of similarities because I started my firm a year after graduating.
Okay, I didn't realize it was that early. Okay.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I got laid off twice in 2009.
Yeah.
So, in between the first one and the second time, I bought a house. So my husband was happy. I was like, okay, So and then by the second time, I was like, I'm gonna go register this thing because I want to have a business. So,
hey, and it's worked out very well to date. So, and who knows? Like, it's kind of the butterfly effect, right? There's
That's
like
true.
one little factor changes. Who knows how the arc ends up? So,
I used to love that whole concept back when I was younger, and then now I've painted the mural of my law firm with the monarch butterfly because they're also a symbol of the because of migrants and immigration. But there's just so many beautiful, and they used to go to my family ranch in Mexico, and so as a child I remember it seeming all orange, but no, I love that concept. And who knows, the people listening are getting impacted and inspired somehow, or learning a thing or two from our dialogue. So, well, thanks, Jack. Best of luck with being a father, and you'll do great. And what's a good way on LinkedIn or email people can find you, and then.
You can definitely find me on LinkedIn. I also started like a law firm owners community recently. Speaking of the Hermosis on their platform School that Alex Hermosi's been promoting. It's called Valore Legal Network, VALORE Legal Network. If you're interested in that sort of thing, just let me know. I think we have about 20 folks in there right now of just other law firm owners, mostly in Texas, but also elsewhere in the country too. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, just let me know. And I'm always looking to connect with other law firm owners. But otherwise, LinkedIn's a good option. Just my name, Jack Duffley. Awesome.
And Power Up Your Practice, we're going to be on School before you know it. And so I think that's a great platform.
Cool.
KOOL. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Thanks, Jack, for joining. And, definitely you can find us on the Power Up Your Practice Facebook group and check out the book on Amazon. And we're always looking for great guests and loved this conversation today. So we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Thanks, Ruby.
Thank you for tuning in to the Power Up Your Practice Law Practice Management Podcast. I'm your host, Ruby Powers, and it's been a pleasure sharing this time with you. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a review, tell someone else about us, and we'd love to get this podcast shared with others to reach more listeners like you. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter for exclusive content, tips, and updates straight to your inbox. And exciting news, our book, The Power Up Your Practice, is out and available on Amazon. It's packed with strategies, 25 chapters, to help you elevate your practice and achieve your goals. So join us next week as we dive into more advice and insight on law practice management. We'll see you next time.